Okay, so here's our video that we're making for SALT week 2 for the class. If you take a look at your homework set, you're only going to see that you need the SALT in the chapter 3 practice set. So let's take a look at what we have here. This is going to kind of be the descriptive statistics section. So as I'm going down, we can start finding some of these things. We get to use SALT, and then we can get some questions answered when it comes to this. So it's going to give us our data set just like last time. We can click on SALT, and we can kind of see what we're taking a look at. So I have my data set here. In this case, I'm dealing with the descriptive statistics. So I'm going to click on that tab, and it's just going to give me the descriptive statistics of my data set. So this is pretty straightforward. I can pick what I want it to tell me in the set, and that might help me out. If I need the population standard deviation, I click on that, and it shows up here. Otherwise, if I don't need it, I don't necessarily have to show it. So if I take a look here, this is going to tell me what's my average. When it just says standard deviation, that's referring to the sample standard deviation. So that would be our sample standard deviation. There's my sample size, my minimum, my first quartile, median, third quartile, and maximum value. So from this table, we can answer all those questions in the problem, like what's the mean, what's the standard deviation, what's the median. Looks like this isn't giving me mode. That's not a concern to us. Mode's relatively easy for us to find when it comes to that. So we'd have to backtrack that one on our own. So if we go back to the problem here, it says what's the mode, what's the median, and what's the mean. The mode, the number that shows up most is 6. We found that the median was 7, and the mean was 8.6. So we would plug those values in, we would have our answer. Now, when we get to part B, it says add 7 to each of the data values, compute the mode, median, and mean for these types of things here. We can actually still use SALT if we want. I think y'all are going to find that this question is relatively easy, but I do want to show you this in SALT. If we go back to our data set, I can actually modify and edit what these values are right here. So I can say, let's make that, add 7 to it. Let's make that 13. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that 13. I'm going to make this 14. So I can manually change all the points in my data set if I want to. So now this is that previous data set with everything changed to have 7 added to it. So now when I come over here, I have an updated mean, 15.6, updated median, 14, and then I would just have to understand what my updated mode would be based on that set. And if I take a look, it's pretty obvious that's going to be 13. So while for this one, you probably didn't need to use SALT to know that you're just going to add 7 to all the answers in the previous one, then that's that, right? So then we could answer this question here, adding the same constant C to each value increases everything by that. So that is the first problem that we see SALT. We see another one that's almost exact. In this case, it's just going to have you multiply. But the same problem is going to hold where we can plug that in, do all those calculations, and figure those things out. One of the reasons why that modification is important to know about is because when we get down to problems like number 12 and number 13, it's going to ask you to find the range in the sample standard deviation and the population standard deviation. Well, the range is pretty easy for us to compute. Max minus min, 7 minus 2. But the standard deviations take a little bit of time, right? We have 2 formulas we have to deal with. So what we can do is we can take these numbers here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, come back into the set, and just change these values to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. And then we'll have that data set we just talked about, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And then we'll have these values here. So now when I go to descriptive statistics, all these things update. And the information I needed to know was the range, which we were able to find, the sample standard deviation, as well as the population standard deviation. So my sample standard deviation was 1.9235. 1.9235, but it says round your answer to 2 decimal places. So we're going to just round this. It's going to become 1.92. And then we come take a look. We get 1.7205. 1.72 would be that value right there. So that's another way that we can use salts, even when the problem doesn't specifically prompt you to use salt. So we can use that on 12. We can use that on 13. That's going to be pretty valuable to us, especially with these decimal numbers. That's going to be helpful. And it's funny because on 14, it says here, use salt, right? So same thing here, same concept. You can pull that up. Probably easier when you pull that up. Let's try this one more time. So we pull up use salt. It's got the data set there, and we're able to find all those things that we need. Make sure we have that information. Relatively straightforward on those. So as we're going down, we can take a look. And the same thing might happen to us if we're looking at box plots. Now, you're going to get a tool in your discussions that shows you how to do some of these calculations, or does the calculations automatically for you. But we can use right here, right, because one of our potential charts here is a box when it comes to that. So we can actually create this box plot to see what we get, what our answers are. We can actually use the thing here to get that interquartile range, which will end up being Q3 minus Q1. And so the thing is that when we go to our data set, we just need to add in rows, right? So whenever I get my points, I have to do this manually. I can add a row and say this is going to be the value 4. And then I'm going to add a row, and this is going to be the value 5. I'm going to add a row, and this is going to be the value 6. Right? So as we're taking a look there, oh, what happened? Add row, 5, check. Yep. Add row, 6, check. So you can see that we just added these 3 rows right here into the data set. And then I can just do that for all of them. It is a little lengthy because there's 20 of them, but we end up having to somehow input this data or somehow make some calculations on those things going forward. The other alternative would be kind of to do this one by hand. If we know that there are 10, we can go 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We know that our median is going to fall somewhere between 23 and 24. So it's going to be roughly 23.5. So that one might make sense. That doesn't. This one also might make sense. A little challenging to see some of those things. And we would just have to verify, okay, well, if I know there's my first half, what's my first quartile? Well, that's 15, right? And then so I could say, is this at 15? This one looks like it's at 15. This one does not look like it's at 15. So this would probably be our answer. So some of these we may be able to reason through and do by hand, but if you'd like to use Cengage for it, you can come over here, you can create a box plot with that value there. And then you can get those specifics as you go there. It'll give you the descriptive statistics here, mean, standard deviation, min, Q1, median, Q3, max. It'll plot them all here. So you can take a look at those. So that's about it for salts for week 2. Just want to make sure you have this. And if at any time you're going through and you have any questions, please let me know so we can make sure you get it. All right, that's all.